Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatari Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Prabhu Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Yadaya Namah, Krishna Yadavaya Namah, Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah, Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhattara Guna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasara Guna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Radha Nila Madhav, Radha Nila Madhav Radhe, Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram, Jaya Lakshmana Hanuman. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Pramanande. Jaya Vishwapara Paramansa Prabhajakacharya Suttara Sarashishimad, Iskon Pratishta Bhiviti Samstapakacharya Vaishnava Siramani Gauru Prajana, Krishna Prema Bhakti Datta Patita Pavana, His Divine Grace, Abhacharavina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patitu Dhari Ki Jai, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatra Gunata, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Gunasat, Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai, Jayananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shiva Sari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Jai Param Dayavasi Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai, Jai Pramanam Sankirtan Eka Janaka, Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinandan, Shriman Gauranga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari, Mahaprana Avatar Ki Jai, Golokera Pramadhan, हरि नाम संकीर्तन जय की जय, जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय, बृहदांग ट्रांसेंडेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय, श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप राधा कुंद श्याम कुंद गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय, श्री ब्रज वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय, डेलोशिप श्री श्री राधा नीलमाधव की जय, श्री श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय, परम करुणा श्री श्री गौर निताय की जय, श्री पुरुषोत्तम चित्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय, श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय, भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशना कर सिंहरे भगवान की जय, गंगा माई जमुना माई की जय, तुलसी महारानी वृंदे देवी भक्ति देवी की जय, बोलो श्री मथुरा रानी की जय, समवेत भक्तवृंद की जय, निताय गौरी प्रमानंदे। All glories to the assembly bodies, all glories to the assembly bodies, all glories to the assembly bodies, all glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru Shri Govinda.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Prahlad Prahlad Daine.
Prahlad Daine.
Hiranyakashipu Rakshaha. Shilatanka Nakhalaye.
Jaya Shilatanka Nakhalaye.
Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha.
Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha.
Yato Yato Yamitato Narsimha.
Jato Jato Yamitato Narsimha.
Bahe Narsimho Hridaye Narsimho. Narasimha Madim Sharanam Prapade. Tava Kara Kamalavare Nakham Adbhuta Shinha. Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringa. Eshavadrita Narahari Rupa. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Narsimha Dev, Jaya Narsimha Dev, Jaya Narsimha Dev, Jaya Narsimha Dev. Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj. नरसिंहदेव भगवान की, प्रहलाद महाराज की, शिल प्रभुपाद की, गौर प्रेमानंदे।
Shri Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai.
Namo Namo Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namo
Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namo.
Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namo
Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namo.
Radha Krishna Seva Prabhu Eya Vilashi
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Eya Vilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Prabhu Eya Vilashi
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Eya Vilasi.
Shaitamaya Shayanalai Taravancha Purnahoi
Jitamara Sharanala Taravancha Pura
Kripa Kori Karachare Vrindavanavasi
Kori Karatare Vrindavanavasi.
Kripa Kori Karachare Vrindavanavasi
Tumi kripa kori karatare Vrindavanavasi.
Moraye ya Vilas Vilas Kunjari Ava
Morae Avila Vila Kunje Diava.
Maya Neheri Basada Jugala Ruparashi
Aminaya Nere Vasada Rupala Ruparasi.
Naya Neheri Basada Jugala Ruparashi
Aminaya Nere Vasada Jugala Ruparasi.
Eni Vedana Dara Sakir Anugata Kara
Eni Vedana Dhara Sakirano Vatakara.
Sevadi Karadiye Koro Nijadasi
Sevayani Karaniye Koroni Jadasi.
Sevadi
Karani Jadasi
Dina Krishna Dase Koi Eye Namora
Dina Krishna Dase Kai Eye Namora
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaya Navasi
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 Yani Kani Chapapani Brahmatyati Kani Cha Kani Tani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Kani Kani Sapapani Brahma Hatyari Kanisa Tani Tani Prana Shanti Pradakti Napade Pade
Yani Kani Chapapani Brahmahatyati Kani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Kani Kani Sapapani Brahma Hatyari Kanisa Tani Tani Prana Shanti Pradakti Napade Pade
Yani Kani Chapapani Brahmahatyati Kani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Kani Kani Sapapani Brahma Hatyari Kanisa Tani Tani Prana Shanti Pradakti Napade Pade
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani,
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi,
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda.
Nitya Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitya Gaura Hari Bo,
Nitya Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitya Gaura Hari Bo. Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devi Priya Ke Saba Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namah. Vrindai Tulasi Devi Priya Ke Saba Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namah. Vrindaye tulasi devaye priyaye kesava satya Krishna bhakti prade devi satavataye namo namah. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki Jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. I desire to attend the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you as wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavana. My desire is that you also grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kari damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always swim in love with Shri Radha and Govind. Shri Mati Tulasi Maharani Vrindevi ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikhastakam ki jai. Chaito Darpanamajanam Shriyakari Vachandika Vitaranam Vidyavadhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvapumastam Param Param Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Vaudha Isa Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamita Shmarane Nakala Itadrusita Bhakti Paramati Durdhaiva Midishanyate Nada Pishnichena Tarorapi Sarishana Amani Namana Dena Kitaniya Sadahari Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitamba Jagadishaka Maye Mama Janmane Janmaneshwari Bhavata Bhakti Rahaitu Kitwai Ainannatanu Jakinkaram Paditamam Visame Bhavam Buddho Kripaya Tavapara Pankaja Stitaduli Sadrusham Vichintaya Nayanam Galora Shodharaya Vadanam Gadagarudhaya Gira Pulakairinchitam Papukada Tavanam Grahane Bhavisyati Jugaitam Nimishena Chakyusha Pravushaitam Sunyaitam Jagata Sarvam Govinda Virainame Aslishabha Padaratam Pinashtumam Adarshana Narmahatam Karotuva Jata Tatava Vidadhatulam Pato Matpranathastu Sa Ivana Paraha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikyastakam ki jai. Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradaya Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaurati Shinama Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Sunnavadi Pasartari Satarine. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart with the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of a conditional life of repeated birth and death. The Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once we chant the holy name over the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself a Lord on straw in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige. and should be ready to offer our respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your casual devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharajananda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I am falling in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love, flying constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And will the hairs of my body stand on the end of that recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sri Krishna Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods, the Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures in pursuance of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which often Vedas as fruitive activities, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the fatherless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are for the compassion for the following conditions of Devancha Kalpaturvascha Kripa Sindhuvya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namah. Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavindi Ki Jai. Shri Guru Pranam Mangala Charan Ki Jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurumilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tarati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jyotaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatha Vintam Tam Sajivam Satvetam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Dalita Shri Vishakam Cha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Sunnavadi Patsatyari Satarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shri Varshavana Videvi Daitaya Kripabdvaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhurjo Jala Premadhya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravane Shri Murtaye Rinatarine Rupanuga Viruddha Pusidanta Dvantarine Namagora Kishoraya Sakchavera Murtaye Vipralambhara Sambodhe Parambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchitanandanamine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaura Virbhava Bhumeswam Nidesa Sajana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Sri Jagannataya Te Namaha.
Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Purachase Namaha Panchatatvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Vitaram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Saktikam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Dayatnam Kirtor Bangur Mama Manda Mate Gati Matsarva Swapadambo Jo Radha Madana Mohano Tivyad Ratnagara Siman Nastato Shimad Radha Sila Govinda Devo Prastali Bhi Sevimanu Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsivata Tatastita Karsan Venuswanir Gopir Gopinata Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Korangi Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasti Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Nadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakasatma Sukalpa Vriksha Laksha Vrite Susurabhira Vipalyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasam Brahma Sevyamanam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Kulanda Ravendra Dalaitaksham Barhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Kotika Maniya Vishesha Sobham Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendri Rittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiranjaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedesa Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Gamyo Vayu Tapi Manasobuni Kumanam So Yastiyat Prapadasim Yavichintya Tatve Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Jayatum Jagadanda Koti Yaschakti Rasta Jagadanda Chayayadanta Andanta Rasta Paramanu Chayanta Rastam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Dio Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayanubusa Suktarya Meva Nigamai Pratitaistuvanti Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Pratibhavitabhis Tabirya Even Nijarupa Tayakalabi Goloka Even Visata Kilatma Bhuto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santak Sadeva Hidesa Vilokayate Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukala Nimena Tista Nana Avataram Akarud Bhuvanesa Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pamam Yo Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhuto Jagadanda Kod Lukotisva Sesa Vasudali Vibhuti Binam Brahman Niskalam Anantam Sesa Bhutam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Yasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Trigunya Tadvisaya Veda Vitayamanam Sattva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Patibhavitati Ya Praninam Patifalam Smaratam Upetya Lilaya Tena Bhuvanani Jaya Jasram Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijadamni Talechatasya Devi Maheswari Dama Sute Sutesu Tete Prabhavani Jaya Vitascha Yena Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Srististate Pralaya Sadhava Sakti Reka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichan Rupam Abhyasya Chitestasesa Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Vishesi Yogat Sanjayate Nahitata Pitakasti Hetu Yasam Bhutama Pitatasam Paitikar Yat Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Departure Evi Dasantaram Abhyapetya Dipayate Vivita Hetu Smanadana Yastadra Gevihicha Vishnu Tayavi Bhati Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakar Nanarna Vajali Bhajatisma Yoga Nidram Ananta Jaganam Saroma Kupa Adhara Saktam Avalambya Param Swamurtim Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyakaniswa Sitakalam Atavalambya Shivanti Loma Villaja Jagadandanata Vishnu Mahansa Yasyakala Abhiseso Govindam Adi Purisham Vajami Hisuni Jesu Teja Suyam Kiyat Prakatiyat Epitadvatatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidanu Karta Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbha Dwande Pranama Samaya Sekadadi Raja Vignan Vihantam Alamasya Jagatrayasya Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agni Mahiga Ganamam Bubudu Jasta Kalas Tatma Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Yamcha Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Sudesa Sabita Sakala Grahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Siteja Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmo Tapapa Nichaya Sutayastapam Si Brahma Dikita Patakava Tyasta Jiva Yadata Matu Vibhava Prakata Prabhava Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yastrinda Gopa Matavendra Mahoswa Karma Bandhan Rupa Falabhajana Matanuti Karmani Nila Hatikintu Chibakti Bhajam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Kruda Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Bitti Vatsalya Moha Guru Gaura Vasevya Bhava Sanchintya Tasha Sadrisim Tanamapurete Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shaya Kanta Kanta Parama Purisha Kalpa Taravo Druma Bhamish Chintamani Ganama Ito Amrutam Kataganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriya Saki Chidanandam Jyotiparam Apitadasvadyam Apicha Sayatra Shiradi Bihisha Vidisrabi Vyasta Sumahan Nimesa Dakyova Rajati Nahiyatra Pisamaya Bhaje Svita Dupam Tamaham Ihagolakam Ityam Vidantas Te Santakshiti Viracharakati Paye Shri Guru Vastika prayers, Kijay. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such spiritual master is an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he is relishing in the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual masters. Spiritual masters always engaged in the temple worship of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual masters. Spiritual masters are always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he's expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tastes for arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all of the scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraja Ki Jai. So today we're going to have a special lecture. It's like a seminar. And the subject today is how chemicals come from life. And it's the complete opposite of what the scientists say. And that's normal because scientists are nonsense. They don't know what they're talking about because they only accept 1/4 of reality. So how can they understand anything about the truth about the universe, about the purpose of human life, about how to attain that purpose, or the relationship everyone has with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and how to attain liberation from the cycle of birth and death. None of those things are understood by the scientists, and therefore they're just cheating people, and whatever kids learn in school is mostly nonsense. Therefore, it's actually child abuse sending your kid to a public school. They have a little chance of learning something in the Catholic schools, but even there's a lot of misconceptions. But Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita are the absolute supreme truth, and we should respect them with great reverence, and thank Srila Prabhupada that he translated it so we can have this access to genuine knowledge. So, in the third canto, 6th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, is an explanation of how the material world was created. Now, this is an important thing to understand because there's no bona fide knowledge of creation today anywhere else. Even the Bible gives a very, very sketchy understanding of the creation of the world. So also the Quran and the Torah. But Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita first, and then Srimad Bhagavatam gives very, very detailed explanation where you could never find this in any other scripture. It's surprising that people born in India don't realize this, that the complete explanation of the material creation is given step by step in exacting detail. And it's important that we know these things. And so when we talk about science, real goal of science is to solve the problem of birth, death, old age, and disease. The scientists that have been so-called engaged in science for at least from the time of the Greeks all the way up to today have not in any way come close to solving the problem of birth, death, old age, and disease. So they're not real scientists. They're bluffers. And they just make up theories, one theory after another, and they keep changing their theories. And in this way, they cheat people by always promising them that we'll eventually solve the riddle of death. They haven't solved anything. In fact, all they've done is create weapons of mass destruction to kill people faster. Before, people would fight with knives or stones or wooden metal utensils, etc. And they kill each other, but it would be in relatively small numbers. Of course, in the Battle of Kurukshetra, 640 million people died in 18 days. That's because they had atomic weapons. Those atomic weapons were in the form of mantras that potentiated the arrows of the Maharathis, such as Arjuna. His arrows were atomic weapons. Therefore, they were able to kill so many people. Like World War II, at maximum in Europe and Japan, about 55 million people died in 4 to 5 years of battle. In 18 days, 640 million people died in the Battle of Kurukshetra. So, you can see the lethal nature of those arrows potentiated by mantra. In any case, this story these facts of creation begins with a little introduction. It says, "The length and breadth of our universe is beyond the imagination of any human being. It is very clear that no mortal person whose lifespan is hardly 100 years old would ever be able to explore the mysteries of the universe. The following information from scientists, astronomers, physicists, and mathematicians will leave one in awe of the imponderable universe. Imponderable means something you can't really understand, because the volumes that are expressed as far as the length and breadth of the universe are way beyond anyone's ability to comprehend. The macrocosmic universe we live in and the microcosmic universe, world within our human bodies, are both enigmatic and imponderable. In other words, the same infinite numbers that you hear about for the expansive universe, you're going to hear similar incredible numbers of things going on in this body. So the macrocosmic and microcosmic world, macrocosmic means the whole breadth of the universe, and microcosmic means the body. It could be the body of an ant or a human being or a demigod. So the numbers that we're going to hear about, the number of blood cells, this thing and that thing, there's a whole list of things, almost comes to the same numbers that we're going to experience in the length and breadth of the universe. So the microcosmic and macrocosmic universe are both have, although they're boundaries, they both have infinite number of living entities and distance and living creatures present. Okay, so the macrocosmic universe we live in and the microcosmic world within our human bodies are both enigmatic, meaning mysterious, and imponderable, meaning not able to be conceived by human beings because the numbers are too great. The universe and the human body have boundaries, yet in both there are infinite entities and constituents. Facts of the universe. Okay, so before we go into that, I'm going to give a quick summary of the material creation as given in the third canto, 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. First of all, we discuss what's called epistemology. How do you know if something is true or false, right? So we base our epistemology, or how we know if something is true or false, based on Shastric evidence, not based on, and Shastric evidence is what's called deductive. What does that mean? As opposed to inductive knowledge. Deductive knowledge is, bona fide deductive knowledge, not the nonsense deductive knowledge of the scientists. Bona fide deductive knowledge is you begin with the self-evident truths of the Vedas. And we accept that the statements of the Vedas, especially Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, have no mistakes in them. And if we begin with those self-evident truths, then we can deduct. Like, for example, if you understand that the soul is eternal, and of course Krishna is a super soul, he's also eternal, right? So therefore, when people say, well, you're going to die, but because we accept Vedic knowledge, we know that only the body can die, not the soul. There's a difference between the soul and the body. So therefore we understand that we're never going to die. Only the temporary bodies that cover our soul will disappear. So, and also we know from the Bhagavad Gita, where it says, Bhumirapo nalova yukam manu buddhirevacha, hankaravi, and so forth, that the body is made of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. And then besides that, apariyamitastvanyam pakriti vidime param. Besides that, there is the superior spiritual energy. So the inferior spiritual energy, or apara prakriti, is the earth, water, fire, air, etc. And the superior spiritual energy is the living being and living entities, you and me, the jivas. So therefore, everything we see in this world is made of matter and spirit. Matter and spirit are not mixed, or there's no chemical bond between them. Matter, spirit, or the soul is independent of matter, but it can be covered because the size of the soul is very small. It can be covered by matter, and that's our situation. There's no chemical bonding of matter and spirit. That's why when the body dies, the soul continues to exist because it's eternal, whereas matter is constantly changing. And we see that. Everybody begins as a microscopic sperm. No one can deny that. And that microscopic sperm, when it connects with an ovum, and when that connection takes place, it's called the zygote in the modern scientific language. So when that takes place, then the nutrient base, which is the ovum, and the jiva, which is put into that sperm by Krishna, simply by glancing on the material nature, begins to grow. Anything that grows and diminishes has a soul in it, right? So there are certain rocks that do that, mountains that do that, clouds that do that, and of course the human species and all types of animals and plants and birds, So that's the symptom of the soul's presence. So therefore, continuing in the epistemology, or how do we know if something is true? Srila Prabhupada writes in 3rd Canto, 6th chapter, verse number 10, intelligent persons estimate the value of the cause by observing the wonders of the effects. So, if we understand what this just said, it means that although you cannot see the soul, you can understand the existence of the soul by the wonderful effects, such as 1, consciousness, such as 2, energy in the body, such as 3, the constant things that take place in the body, such as the mind and the ability to conceive concepts and to transform those concepts into tangible things like houses and cars and things like that. So these are all effects of the soul. If you have a rock, most rocks, almost all rocks have no consciousness, and therefore they can't have thoughts and then ideas and then actuate those ideas and make things, right? So there's a difference between dead matter and living beings. Living beings are a eternal soul that's covered by matter, but the matter seems to be alive because of the presence of the soul. And the soul and the super soul are both present in the body. The super soul is the source of all the energy, and the jiva also participates in distributing the energy throughout the body, and therefore the body is animated and it grows or it diminishes over time. So, first point of real scientific, let's say, development of knowledge is that intelligent persons estimate the value of the cause by the wonders of the effects. The second principle is, without the living entity, a living body cannot automatically take shape or develop. Number 3, when any material object displays development, it must be understood that there is a spirit soul within the manifestation. Number 4, the gigantic universe has developed gradually, just as the body of the child develops. So again, we see what's happening on the macroscopic level is also happening on the microscopic level. The child's body develops gradually over 10 months in the womb of a mother. In the same way, the universe evolved gradually, and we're going to hear about that in more depth now. The Lord, and number 5, the Lord can reveal himself only to a person who is submissive and who engages in his transcendental loving service. In other words, if you want to learn real science, if you want to learn what is reality in this world, you have to be submissive. Amanidvam, adamidvam, ahimsasantir arjavam, acharya pasamam sakshat, sarvam, atmanivignaha. In other words, the first principle of knowledge is humility. This is not taught in schools. This is only taught in spiritual schools, like the temple. Without that humility, knowledge is not really a benefit, because one will get puffed up, and they will also become victims of their own false ego and develop many false theories. So the Lord can reveal himself only to a person who is submissive and who engages in his transcendental loving service. Okay, so I don't want to go too deeply into epistemology, or how do we know if something is true or false. But this is explained in much more depth in the introduction to the Ishopanishad, if you want to learn more about how to know if something is true or false. Okay, so the main point is anything that is in the Vedas and is validated by the acharyas is truth. And that's what we should stick to. In other words, na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sata, ubayor apidristo tatas, paniyos tatvadarsipi. Second chapter, 16th verse says that someone, like a devotee, is more interested in sat than in asat. Sat is anything that is eternal, and asat are things that are temporary. So, although both the material nature, or the apara prakriti, and the para prakriti, the spiritual nature, are eternal, but the material nature, all the forms that are made with the earth, water, fire, air, etc., are temporary, and they appear and then they disappear. So they're illusory in that sense. The energy is eternal, but it also has an illusory effect, because sometimes it's manifest and sometimes it's not manifest, and you can't see it. So therefore, the only thing that is fully real in the sense of always being like existing is the spiritual energy, the superior spiritual energy. So once we attain the understanding of our relationship with Krishna and the existence of the spiritual world, we will never be in illusion. It's only when we accept the body and the material world as something that has real substance, and what kind of external substance, such as buildings and cars and factories and schools and houses and so forth, then we'll be in illusion, because all of those things are going to disappear and deteriorate over time, and it causes great stress and bewilderment of people. So therefore, intelligent people are concerned with sat, what is eternal, such as the soul, such as the spiritual world, such as Krishna consciousness, practicing the regulative principles, chanting your rounds every day. These things are real. The other things, the cars, the Costco and all that, they're not actually real, in the sense that they're not going to have duration. They're going to disappear. And that Costco that was there somewhere, right? It's going to disappear, and you'll go back and look at an empty field and say, "Oh, well, I remember it used to be a big building here," but it's not there anymore. So it's illusory, because it just becomes a dream at a certain point. Okay, now as far as the creation of the world, in the third canto, 6th chapter, 2nd verse, it says, "The supreme powerful Lord, the supreme powerful Lord simultaneously entered into the 23 elements with the goddess Kali, his external energy, who alone amalgamates all the different elements." This is human. So this is an important verse if you want to know where the material creation begins. And it says, what are these 23 elements? The ingredients of matter are counted as 23. 1, the total material energy, or the Mahatattva. 2, the false ego. 3, sound, touch. 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 is sound, touch, form, taste, smell. So these are called the Tan Mantras. These are the what is perceived with the 5 senses, which is eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin. And then there's earth, water, fire, air, and sky or ether. And then there's the working senses, which are the hands, the legs, the evacuating organ, and the genitals. Okay, and then there's speech and there's mind. So you have gross matter and subtle matter, and you have all these different things that constitute what you would call the 23 elements of the material world. And then Prabhupada writes, all are combined together by the influence of time and are again dissolved in the course of time. Time, therefore, is the energy of the Lord and acts in her own way by the direction of the Lord. This energy is called Kali and is represented by the dark, destructive goddess generally worshipped by persons influenced by the mode of darkness or ignorance in material existence. So this is not Kali, the person who's advancing the Kali Yuga. This is Kali, Mother Durga, in her terrible form, with her red tongue sticking out, and with the weapons that she has, right? And she's also representing time. Okay, so the energy which acts as material nature in combination of the 23 ingredients is not the final source of creation. That's what the scientists believe, modern scientists, they believe, and also the different types of philosophical speculators. They believe that there's only matter. There's nothing beyond that. It's called empiricism. They believe that only what they can perceive with their senses is true, and anything else is not true, such as the spiritual world, such as God, etc. So, Prabhupada says that this combination of these 23 elements is not the final source of creation. The Lord enters into the elements and applies his energy, called Kali. In all other Vedic scriptures, the same principle is accepted. In Brahma Samhita, it is said, Ekopya Sora Chayatim Jagadanda Kotim Yas Chaktirasti Jagadanda Chayatanta Antantarastu Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. So here, Prabhupada is going to give an alternate translation of this verse from the Brahma Samhita. And it's very important that we not only learn the translations, like given to these verses, but we should also learn the alternate translations to get a deeper understanding of these verses. So this verse is translated now by Prabhupada, and he says, I worship the primeval Lord, Govinda, who is the original personality of Godhead. By his partial plenary expansion, Mahavishnu, he enters into material nature and then into each and every universe as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and then as Shirodakshaya Vishnu into all the elements, including every atom of matter. Such manifestations of cosmic creation are innumerable, both in the universes and in the individual atoms. So again, we see the microcosm has innumerable, let's say, entities and innumerable things that are unimaginable, and so does the microcosm. Like the body has unimaginable numbers of cells and microbes and things like that we don't really understand. And most of us have never really heard the numbers of what's going on in our own body. We don't really understand hardly anything about our own body, just as we hardly understand anything about the universe. So it says, similarly, this is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, 42nd verse. Atama bahunaitena kim yatena tavarjuna vistabhyaham idam krishnam ekam senastito jagat. O Arjuna, there is no necessity of your knowing about my innumerable energies, which act in various ways. I enter into the material creation by my partial plenary expansion, Paramatma, or the Supersoul, in all the universes and in all the elements thereof, and thus the work of creation goes on. So that's also like an alternate translation of the same verse in the Bhagavad Gita. The wonderful activities of material nature are due to Lord Krishna, and thus he is the final cause or the ultimate cause of all causes. So this is called the real crux of epistemology, or how to know something is true or false. Krishna is the primary quality of everything. Now, in modern philosophy, in schools, they explain what are primary qualities and secondary qualities. But because scientists and philosophers, most philosophers, only deal with what they can perceive with their senses, they misunderstand what is the primary quality of everything. The primary quality of everything is Krishna himself, who's present as Paramatma in every atom of the universe and in the heart of every living entity. So the primary quality is not what you can measure with a tape. In other words, the length, width, and breadth of object. They would call that a primary quality. And the secondary quality would be the color of something, because the color can change according to light, right? But therefore, it's mutable. It'll change. But the primary quality, that is the length, width, and breadth, the weight, the size, things like that, those are considered primary qualities by the false philosophers. But the real primary quality of everything is Krishna, because he's present everywhere, right? In the spiritual world and in the material world. Okay, so then in the third canto, 6th chapter, verse 3, thus when the personality of Godhead entered into the elements by his energy, all the living now, by the way, everything is the energy of the Lord. Like Jiva, you and me, we are one energy of the Lord. How do we know that? Because we're able to do things. We're able to lift things. We're able to build things. We're able to conceive things. All this is due to energy. And that energy is originally coming from Krishna. Okay, so it says, thus, when the personality of Godhead entered into the elements by his energy, all the living entities were enlivened into different activities, just as one is engaged in his work after awakening from sleep. So in other words, everybody who engages in sense gratification, when they die, they're all reabsorbed into the body of Mahavishnu, waiting for the next exhalation of the Lord, or the next creation in the material world. And it can take hundreds and billions of years. We could be asleep in the body of Mahavishnu for hundreds and millions of years, or billions of years, waiting for the next. Because in the material world, there's relativity. So 1 second for Mahavishnu could mean millions and billions of years for us. And therefore, that's why it's so dangerous to waste the human life in sense gratification, because then you'll get absorbed back in the body of Mahavishnu, or we will get absorbed in the body of Mahavishnu, and they'll have to wait a very, very long time in deep sleep, where there's no dreaming, no thinking. And then we're pushed out again, and then how we're going to come out, we're not sure, because it depends on our karma. So it's not, if we spent our whole life in sense gratification, we're not going to have a human body. We're going to have a much lower body, and then you have to wait to come gradually back to the human body, which could take millions of births and deaths again. You see what a tragedy it is to waste a human life and not go back to Godhead and just enjoy very gross sense gratification. All it does is dissipate your energy. Your energy is being wasted by sense gratification. And then have to be absorbed back in the body of Mahavishnu and then pushed out again and no telling what your next body is, and then go through the whole process all over again to gradually come back to the human form of life where you have another chance to be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. That's the worst thing that can happen to a person. That's why it says, Nahabikrama nastusti pratijaya navidite swapam apiyasya dharmasya chayate mahato bhayat. Chayate mahato bhayat. The worst thing that can happen to a person is to waste all the assets that we have, this highly developed senses and mind and intelligence, and use them only for making money and working like a ASS day and night, just thinking and being in anxiety, paying taxes and paying this and paying that, and then dying in confusion, and then you have to wait so many millions and billions of years and then start again, probably in a lower form of life, and wait again to go through so many different disgusting forms of life till you come to the human form. And then in the human form, if you're fortunate, you may, and that's not guaranteed, you may meet a genuine devotee who can explain what is the truth about the human body and what potential it actually has. And then then you have a chance to become liberated for good from the cycle of birth and death. So it is a tragedy to waste this lifetime as a human being, because we've already gone through hundreds and millions of births, 8.4 million births, to reach the human form of life, and a civilized form. There are very few civilized forms out of the 400,000 different human species. So to waste that life, after going through all kinds of sense gratification in previous lives, to waste that life on sense gratification is a very, very major mistake, because you could lose the human form of life and start all over again. So and that's considered the worst thing. If, after having this body, to end up with 4 legs and a wet snout like a dog and a tail, that would be the worst thing that could happen to you, right? Okay, so then it says, when the 23, this is 364, when the 23 principal elements were set in action by the will of the Supreme, the gigantic universal form, or the Vishwarupa body of the Lord, came into existence. So this universal form, or Virat Rupa, is a temporary, gigantic body of Krishna that encompasses the entire universe. So therefore, now we see everything is personal, whether in the spiritual world or the material world. This entire universe is manifested from the body of Virat Rupa, which is a temporary body of Krishna for the material creation. There's no Virat Rupa in the spiritual world. It's only in the material world. But everything is coming from the body of Krishna. Just, in other words, all the chemicals, all the jivas, everything is coming through this body of Virat Rupa into the material world. And therefore, everything is personal. There's no impersonality. Once you begin to understand things, you'll see that it's a fact, because nothing is independent of the body of the Virat Rupa. Okay, so then it says, as the Lord in his plenary portion entered into the elements of the universal creation, and it's talking about Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and especially Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, They transformed into the gigantic form in which all the planetary systems and all movable and immovable creations rest. So the Virat Rupa is coming from the Vishnu incarnations. It's not independent of anything. Right? And Prabhupada explains in the purport, the elements of cosmic creation are all matter and have no potency to increase in volume unless entered into by the Lord in his plenary portion. This means that matter does not increase or decrease unless it is spiritually touched. Matter is a product of spirit and increases only by the touch of spirit. So now we see all the idiots like Turing and other people that say, well, if there is a soul, it's due to a combination of matter. Or if there is a soul, eventually through AI, we will create a soul also. So these are all crazy nonsense ideas that are being taught and spoken about as if, they're real, but they're not real. They're all false ideas. Right? So here it says, the elements of the cosmic creation are all matter and have no potency to increase in volume unless entered into by the Lord in his plenary portion. This means that matter does not increase or decrease unless it is spiritually touched. Matter is a product of spirit and increases only by the touch of spirit. The entire cosmic manifestation has not assumed its gigantic form by itself, as wrongly calculated by less intelligent persons. As long as spirit is within matter, matter can increase as needed, but without the spirit, matter stops increasing. For example, as long as there is spiritual consciousness within the material body of a living entity, the body increases to the required size. But a dead material body, which has no spiritual consciousness, stops increasing. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, importance is given to the spiritual consciousness, not the body. So, beginning from second chapter, verse number 17. Avinasi tutad vidi yena sarvam idam tatam vinasam abhiyasyasya nakaschit kartam arhati. That which pervades the entire body you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy the imperishable soul. This is the first thing we have to teach our kids, that you are not this body, that you have an eternal soul that's animating the body with consciousness. This is the first thing they destroy in school. They say, you're just this body. If you believe in a soul, that's not scientific. It's based on religion. Religion is not science. This is what they teach you. And therefore, they're right from the beginning, they are misleading kids. So therefore, the first thing a kid has to learn is that who you are actually is a soul. And the soul is part and parcel of Krishna. Mamayavam sajiva loka jiva bhuta sanatana. And it's eternal, sanatana. Okay, so as long as spirit is within matter, matter can increase, etc. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, importance is given to the spiritual consciousness, not the body. The entire cosmic body increased by the same process that we experience in our small bodies. So in other words, the Virat Rupa evolved in the same way that a child evolves in the womb of the mother, gradually. Right? One should not, however, foolishly think that the individual infinitesimal soul is the cause of the gigantic manifestation of the universal form. The universal form is called the Virat Rupa because the Supreme Lord is within it in his plenary portion. Okay, then third canto, 6th chapter, 7th verse. The total energy of the Mahatattva in the form of the gigantic Virat Rupa divided himself by himself into the consciousness of the living entities, the life of activity and self-identification, which are subdivided into 1, 10, and 3 respectively. Okay, so what does this mean exactly? 1, 10, and 3. Consciousness is the sign of the living entity's presence in the body, right? Because what did we say in the beginning? Intelligent persons estimate the value of the cause by observing the wonders of the effects. So, there are two wonders here. One is when a baby is born, it's animate and it begins to grow and it eventually learns to walk and talk. This is all animation, right? And at the last moment, when Pitaji or Mataji is dying, they're moving a little bit, and then all of a sudden the last breath goes out of their mouth or whatever. And if the last breath comes out of the anus, you take birth as an animal. If the last breath comes out of the mouth, you're going either to the heavenly planets or you're going back to Godhead. So you have to watch people when they're dying to see where they're going to go. But anyway, when Pitaji or Mataji die, they become inanimate. They don't move anymore. They don't speak anymore, right? That means something left. Now, is that something, a bunch of chemicals? No, because you can inject them with, you can analyze all the chemicals in the body before a person dies, and all the chemicals in the body right after they died, the chemicals are still there. None of the chemicals have disappeared, right? And if you think there's something disappeared, you can inject it into the person, but they still don't come back alive. You see? So there's something else that left the body. So now, the total consciousness is that of the gigantic Virat Rupa, and the same consciousness is established in individual persons. So this consciousness is one, right? It's because it says here that the total energy of Mahatattva in the form of the gigantic Virat Rupa divided himself by himself into the consciousness of living entities, the life of activity, and self-identification, which are subdivided into 1, 10, and 3 respectively. So number 1 is consciousness, which is coming from the Virat Rupa, and eventually due to the jiva, which is part and parcel of the original body, of the transcendental body of Krishna, whether it's the Virat Rupa or Krishna himself in the spiritual world. 2, the activity of consciousness is performed through the air of life, which is of 10 divisions. The airs of life are called prana, apana, udana, vyana, samana, and are also differently qualified as naga, kurma, krikara, devadatta, and dhananjaya. I'm going to explain this a little bit later on. These are 10 types of air in the body. So one type of air is the air you breathe in, like this, through the nose or the mouth. Right? Another type of air is the air that you breathe out, like a burp, or by coming from the anus. You exude an air. See, so the body is animated by these airs. There's different airs. There's 10 of them. 5 principal airs and 5 lesser airs, and we'll go over them in a second. So that is 10. So we covered 1 and 10, and then next is 3. The consciousness of the soul becomes polluted by the material atmosphere, and thus various activities are exhibited in the false ego of bodily identification. These various activities are described in Bhagavad Gita 2.41, Bahusaka hyanantascha buddhayo vivasayanam. The conditioned soul is bewildered. This word anantas means infinite. As soon as we become conscious and our consciousness becomes polluted, we can have an infinite number of material desires. So therefore it says 1, 10, and 3 respectively. So let's continue. The conditioned soul is bewildered into various activities for want of pure consciousness. In pure consciousness, the activity is one. The consciousness of the individual soul becomes one with the supreme consciousness when there is complete synthesis between the two. So this oneness means you agree with Krishna. although we are different than Krishna, as we are individual jivas, but when we agree in every point with Krishna, we become one. Not like the Mayavadis say that you merge into the Lord and you become one. We become one by agreeing with the Lord and following his instructions. So Arjuna was not one with the Lord in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, but when he asked so many questions and Krishna answered all his questions, he became one with the Lord. He completely agreed with everything the Lord said and followed his instructions. That is real oneness, not the idea that you merge into the body of the Lord or you merge into the Brahma Jyoti and you become God. That's not oneness. The monists believe that there is only one consciousness, whereas the sattvatas, or the devotees, believe that although there is undoubtedly one consciousness, because you see that one consciousness of Virat Rupa divided itself into many and entered into the, with the soul, into the body of all these living entities, right? So the individual consciousness is advised to dovetail with the supreme consciousness as instructed by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita 1866. Sarvadharmam purityajya mamekam saranam vraja ham tvam sarvapapebhyo mukshishami masuchaha. So it says, oh, hey Arjuna, give up all your false theories and give up all your so-called dharmas and just surrender unto me. Mam ekam saranam vraja. The individual consciousness is advised to dovetail with the supreme consciousness as instructed by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita 1866. The individual consciousness, Arjuna, is advised to dovetail with the supreme consciousness and thus maintain his conscious purity. So dovetail means you connect like this. So when we connect to Krishna through hearing from him and surrendering unto him, and offering all our service to him with love and devotion, then we become purified of all these false concepts. It is foolish to try and stop the activities of consciousness. That's what the Mayavadis try and do. But they can be purified when they are dovetailed with the Supreme. This consciousness is divided into three modes of self-identification according to the proportion of purity. 1. Adi-atmika, or self-identification with the body and mind. 2. Adi-bhotika, or self-identification with material products. And 3. Adi-daivika, or self-identification as the servant of the Lord. Of the three, Adi-daivika, or self-identification is with the Lord, as a servant of the Lord, is the beginning of purity of consciousness in pursuance of the desire of the Lord. So most people self-identify with the mind and body. That's false. And therefore, they're never going to be successful in this lifetime in the human body. They'll end up as animals. And there are other people that identify with the material products, like a Tesla, or a house, or a business, or clothing, or there's so many things you can self-identify with, right? So as soon as you self-identify with those things, you fall into illusion again. And at the moment of death, instead of seeing Krishna, you could see your Florsheim shoes that you have, that you polish every day, right? See, there's a poem by Emily Dickinson. She said, "When I died, I heard a bee buzzing." So that means, what did she become in the next life? She became a bee, right? So that's a very cynical poem that she wrote. So, but even she understood there's something wrong with that, right? Yeah, because if we spend our life, watching movies and listening to the news and going to Disneyland and associating with Donald Duck and Dumbo, that's what we'll see at the end of life. In the end of life, in about 30 seconds, your whole life unfolds in front of you, in your mind. And if most of the things were nonsense things that we did, like going to Yosemite Park or going to Disneyland or whatever. That's what you're going to see, because that's what you mostly did. But if you were a pujari and always worshiping the deity, guess what you're going to see? You're going to see Krishna and Radha and Krishna, or whichever deity you were worshiping. See? So it all depends on what we do and what our mind and intelligence is focused on. See? So then it says, those are the three things. So there's 1, 10, and 3. And Prabhupada says, in Bhagavad Gita 7.4 and 5, it is stated that the 8 elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, are all products of the Lord's inferior energy, whereas the living entities who are seen to utilize the inferior energy originally belong to the superior energy, the internal potency of the Lord. The 8 inferior energies work grossly and subtly, whereas the superior energy works on the central generating force that's coming from Paramatma in the heart. That the central generating force of the body is coming from the Paramatma. Without the Paramatma, nothing would be animate, nothing would be working, let's put it like that. This is experienced in the human body. The gross elements, namely earth, etc., form the external gross body and are like a coat, whereas the subtle mind and false ego act like the inner clothing of the body, like your underwear. Okay. 1. The movements of the body are first generated from the heart, because the heart is where Paramatma is present, and the Jivatma. 2. All the activities of the body are made possible by senses, powered by the 10 kinds of air within the body. The 10 kinds of air are described as follows. The main air passing through the nose in breathing is called prana. The air which passes through the rectum as evacuated bodily air is called apana. The air which adjusts the foodstuff within the stomach and which sometimes sounds as belching is called samana. The air which passes through the throat and the stoppage of which constitutes suffocation is called udana air. And the total air which circulates throughout the entire body is called the vyana air. Subtler than these 5 airs, there are others also. That which facilitates the opening of the eyes and mouth, etc., is called naga air. The air which increases appetite is called krikara air. The air which helps contraction is called kurma air, and the air which helps relaxation by opening the mouth wide in yawning is called devadatta air. And the air which helps sustenance is called dhananjaya air. All these airs are generated from the center of the heart, which is one only. This central energy is superior energy of the Lord, who is seated within the heart with the soul of the body, or the jiva, who acts under the guidance of the Lord. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita 15:15. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanavisto matak smriti jnanam apahanam cha vedaischa sarvirham eva vedya vedantakrit vedavid eva chaham. Which means the complete central force is generated from the heart by the Lord, who is situated there and who helps the conditioned soul in remembering and forgetting. Yes, now that's important. If you want to have sense gratification, Krishna has to help you. You can't do it on your own. The first thing he does is help you forget him, because you can't engage in sense gratification comfortably unless you forget God. If while you're doing sense gratification, you say, oh, Krishna's watching, oh, Krishna's there, I got to be careful, Krishna's seeing everything I'm doing. You wouldn't enjoy the sense gratification. You wouldn't be able to do it, right? If you're always thinking of Krishna while you're having sense gratification. But therefore, Krishna has to help you by helping you forget him. And he does that through Maya, and she's very good at helping people forget Krishna. Look at Lord Shiva. As soon as he saw Mohini Murti, he left his wife, who was standing right next to him, and ran after her. He went into extreme Maya. And his wife is Maya, right? But there's a greater Maya, it's called Vishnu Maya. Right? So he completely forgot his wife and ran after Mohini Murti. So we see that he helps us forget him if we're always thinking about having sense gratification. Everything starts with a thought. And from the thought, there's three subtle processes: thinking, feeling, and then willing. And then you do the action. So you think, oh, it would be so nice if I could meet this person. And then feeling, oh, it would feel so good being with this person. And then willing, I have to be with this person, otherwise my whole life is wasted. That means you'll do whatever. You phone, you bump into them on the street, or whatever. You tie them up and blindfold them and put them into your cellar, whatever. But in one way or other, you have to meet this person, right? So these are the three subtle steps before action. And Krishna consciousness acts on the level of these three subtle, let's say, decisions that you have to make before you act. It can stop you if you think of Krishna while you're contemplating an object of sense gratification. You say, oh, no, I can't go after that. Then I would violate my vows to Prabhupada and Krishna. I can't do that. Or then you go to the second stage where you're feeling how good it would feel to be with that person or with that thing, and they say, no, what am I doing? It's all Maya. I'm not going to do this, And then the third, I have to do it. I'm determined I'm going to do it. You say, no, if you do it, you'll violate your whole relationship with Guru and Krishna. No, I'm not going to do it. So Krishna consciousness can act on these three levels to stop us. But if you get really determined, then you're going to do it. And then Krishna really helps you forget him completely. Okay, so then we jump to the third canto, 6th chapter, 35th verse, which says, O Vidura, who can estimate or measure the transcendental time, work, and potency of the gigantic form manifested by the internal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Talking again about the Virat Rupa, this gigantic form. So Prabhupada says the frog-like philosophers may go on with their mental speculations on the subject matter of the Virat, the gigantic form exhibited by Yoga Maya, internal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But factually, no one can measure such a vast exhibition. What does this mean exactly? Basically, it's saying this Virat Rupa, which encompasses, and it's like what you would call the boundary, the end boundary of the universe, is so big that we cannot even imagine what it is. Now we're going to go into that deeply, and then the same numbers will come up when we go deeply into the human body, which is unbelievable, right? Which we never realized before. So these frog-like philosophers, just like the frog in the well, who hears about the Pacific Ocean, and he tries to measure it by puffing up his body with air. And he says, is it as big as this? No. Is it big as this? No. Is it as big as this? The frog blows up because the balloon cracked. See, so how can a frog living in a little well understand the length and breadth of the Pacific Ocean? In the same way, how can any living entity like you and me, a living being, even though you're a scientist, even though you know mathematics, how can you measure the length and breadth of the universe? And all of that is, and I'm going to explain the numbers in a minute. You'll see it's impossible. It's imponderable. You cannot really understand it. So then it says, Anika Bahudara Vaktrasnetram, which means, O my Lord, O gigantic Vishwarupa form, O Master of the universe, I see innumerable hands, bodies, mouths, and eyes in all directions, and they are all unlimited. I cannot find the end of this manifestation, nor do I see the middle nor the beginning. So this is Arjuna when he saw the universal form. Krishna gave him the eyes to see it. This is the 11th chapter, 16th verse. And Krishna blessed him with the eyes to see it. Now, Arjuna was not really interested in universal form or Virat Rupa, but he knew that in Kali Yuga there would be so many people pretending to be God. And there's a long list of them. I have the list. If you ever want to see it, it's a very long list of people who claim that they are God. And that's only in India. It's not all the other countries of the world. They have the same thing in Christianity and Islam and Judaism also. People claiming that they are the Mahdi, or they are the second coming of Jesus Christ, or they are this or they are that. So it's not only the Hindus, believe me. So yeah, you should see the list. It's a long list of people who claim that they are God, or have claimed that they are God, or whose disciples say they are God. See? So Arjuna knew this. That's why he asked Krishna to show his universal form. And then Krishna blessed him and gave him eyes to see the universal form. And what is he saying? Look, I'm bewildered. I'm seeing, millions of hands and millions of bodies and mouths and eyes in all directions, and they are all unlimited. I cannot find the end of this manifestation, nor do I see the middle nor the beginning. Right? So Prabhupada writes, Bhagavad Gita was specifically spoken to Arjuna, and the Vishwarupa was exhibited before him at his request. He was awarded the specific eyes to see this Vishwarupa. Yet, although he was able to see the Lord's innumerable hands and mouths, he was unable to see him completely. Since Arjuna was unable to estimate the length and breadth of the potency of the Lord, who else would be able to do so? One may only indulge in miscalculation like the frog philosopher. The frog philosopher wanted to estimate the length and breadth of the Pacific Ocean by his experience of a well 3 cubic feet large, and thus he began to puff himself up to become as big as the Pacific Ocean, but at last he burst and died by this process. This story is applicable to the mental philosophers and scientists who, under the illusion of the Lord's external energy, indulge in estimating the length and breadth of the Supreme Lord. The best path is to become a cool-headed, submissive devotee of the Lord. Try to hear about the Lord from the bona fide spiritual master, and thus serve the Lord in transcendental loving service, as suggested in the previous verse. So, if you ever meet someone, like one time I met a person. He came to our temple when we had a little house here. And after I gave a class, he came up to me and said, "Do you know who I am?" I said, "No, sir, I don't know who you are." So he took his wallet out and gave me a card. He said, "Read this." So he was acting really funny, right? He was like strange. So I looked at the card and it says, Rosicrucians of America certify that so-and-so, the name of the man, is a bona fide incarnation of God. He said, "Now you know who I am?" I said, "Look, let me ask you a question." So what is it? I said, "How did you become God?" He said, "Oh, well, it's not that hard." He said, I did some meditation, and then I also smoked some marijuana, and I passed the test at the Rosicrucians. That's how I became God. I said, "Now I know that you are a complete fraud." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "God does not have to become God. God is God. So you're a fraud. Get the hell out of here." So you see, here's the test. If you want to know if someone is God, if someone tells you, "I am God," you can ask them, "Okay, can you give me universal vision like Krishna gave Arjuna so I can see your universal form?" So you're not ready yet. You're not surrendered enough to me. He said Arjuna didn't have to surrender to Krishna. He just said, show me your universal form. Give me the eyes to see it. And if he can't do it, then you know he's not God. Arjuna was not completely surrendered at that point, right? In the 11th chapter, he's not complete. He knows Krishna is God, but he's not surrendered to him. It's only when Krishna says, that you must surrender completely to me, that Arjuna surrenders completely, right? And that's near the end. And then Krishna says to him, are you okay now? He said, yeah, nasti moha smitir labva tat prasadat muyuchita stitosmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tava. He says, nasti moha, now Krishna, all my moha, my illusion is nasti, it's gone away. Nasti moha smitir labva, now I can remember who I am. I am your eternal servant. Tat prasadat muyuchita. Krishna, this is your best prasad. Tat prasadat mayuchita, he's saying, oh Achyuta, oh infallible one. This is your best prasad. You've eliminated my moha, my illusions in life, all the false concepts I learned in public school and elementary classes and middle classes and senior classes, and then everything I learned in my sophomore year and my next year and this year, and then I got my PhD also. All that nonsense is gone out of my mind now. Now I know who I am, and now I know what I should do, and now I know what the real goal of life is, and now I know how to come back to you, my dear Lord, and be with you even now in the material world all the time. So, he said, this is the best prasad, Stitos me, now I'm situated in my right position as your eternal servant. Gata sandeya, I don't have any doubts anymore. Karishye vachanam tava, whatever you say, Krishna, that's what I'm going to do. That is the ultimate statement of faith in God. Right? Like if your kid has faith in you, you say, Dad, Mom, whatever you say, that's what I'm going to do. And that's for the rest of my life. You would be happy, wouldn't you? Would you be happy if your kid said that? Now you know something about Krishna. Krishna is our Father, right? So if you say that to Krishna, Karishye vachanam tava, whatever you say, that's what I'm going to do. That means Krishna becomes your best friend and your best, let's say, he becomes vulnerable at that stage. Just like if your son or daughter said that to you and meant it, you would be vulnerable. You would do anything for that son or daughter. Even give up your life if it's necessary. Right? So, that's how powerful that statement is. Karishye vachanam tava. It's right at the end of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so then it continues here. The third canto, 6th chapter, 38th verse. O my son, this is Krishna speaking to Brahma, the original poet, Brahma, after mature meditation for 1,000 celestial years, could know only that the glories of the Supreme Soul are inconceivable. After Brahma meditated for 1,000 celestial years, which is billions of years, actually might even approach 1 trillion years. It's an extremely long time that Brahma meditated after he heard tapa. So if you read Brahma Samhita, it explains, Brahma is born as the mental child. Garbhodaksha Vishnu did not use Lakshmi to engender Brahma. He created Brahma by himself. And Brahma is sitting on the whorl of a lotus flower, and there's a long stem coming from the, like an umbilical cord, coming from the belly button of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And the whole universe is within that stem, so you can imagine how big it is. But on the top is the lotus flower, and Brahma is sitting there, and he doesn't know what his purpose in life is, and he doesn't see anything. So he goes into the stem to search out, things, but it's before the material creation has taken place. So he doesn't find anything, doesn't see anything. So he comes back up again. He's completely confused, and he hears 2 syllables, ta-pa. Immediately, because he had a previous life, he knows what it means. And it means you must do severe tapasya. So then he understands, okay, that's what I have to do. So he goes into a deep state of meditation, and it lasts for 1,000 celestial years. That's a huge amount of time. It's unbelievable. We can't even calculate how long that is. And at that point, he hears Krishna's flute, and he becomes enlightened with a certain amount of transcendental knowledge. Not everything, but a lot of transcendental knowledge. And he gets a short vision of the spiritual world of Vaikuntha, right? And now he understands. He has, the E equals MC squared, completely understood. So he knows now how to transform energy into matter and then form matter into bodies, because he's the original Prajapati. This is all explained in Brahma Samhita. So, therefore, Prabhupada now says that it is said in the Brahma Samhita that the mental speculator may fly through the sky of speculation with the velocity of the mind or the wind for thousands and millions of years, and still he will find it inconceivable. The devotees, however, do not waste time in such vain searching after knowledge of the Supreme, but they submissively hear the glories of the Lord from bona fide devotees. Thus they transcendently enjoy the process of hearing and chanting. The Lord approves of the devotional activities of the devotees, or Mahatmas, and he says, Mahatmanas tumam partha daivim pakritim asritaha bhajanti ananya manaso gyatva bhutadim avyayam satatam kirtiyan tumam chitantascha jyotirvataha namasyantascha mam bhakta nitya yukta upasate. The pure devotees of the Lord take shelter of the para prakriti, the internal potency of the Lord, called Lakshmi Devi, or Sita Devi, or Srimati Radharani, or Srimati Rukmini Devi, and thus they become actual Mahatmas, or great souls. Mahatmas are not fond of indulging in mental speculations, but they actually take to the devotional service of the Lord without the slightest deviation. So that's a verse, which is in the Bhagavad Gita 14th chapter, 26th verse. I'll say it in a minute. So it says, devotional service is manifested by the primary process of hearing and chanting about the activities of the Lord. This transcendental method practiced by the Mahatmas gives them sufficient knowledge of the Lord, because if the Lord can at all be known to some extent, it is only means of no other way. One may go on speculating and waste the valuable time of his human life, but that will not help anyone to enter into the precincts of the Lord. The Mahatmas, however, are not concerned with knowing the Lord by mental speculation, because they enjoy hearing about his glorious activities and his transcendental dealings with his devotees or with the demons. The devotees take pleasure in both and are happy in this life and the life after. So why does it mention demons? Because Krishna kills demons, and the devotees love hearing about how he does it. Right? Just like, if you see a heavyweight fight, right, between two big heavyweights, and you have one of those heavyweights that you're hoping is going to win, and at the end of the fight, your guy wins, you feel really happy. He beat the other guy, right? So this is the type of happiness devotees feel, hearing all about all the positive pastimes of the Lord with his devotees, and also hearing how the devotee is killing all these demons. But his killing is different than our killing. When we kill someone, it's devastating. When he kills someone, they go back to Godhead. So if you're a demon and you're killed by Krishna, you at least will get liberation in the Brahma Jyoti, which is something spiritual, right? It might not be, but if while he was killing you, you were happy he killed you, then you go to Vaikuntha, right? But if you're really very upset about the whole thing, then you just attain the Brahma Jyoti, and then you can eventually fall down from there. Okay, so why did we go through this? Because this explains the incredibility and the unlimited potency of the Lord that we will never be able to fully understand. We are coexistent with Krishna in terms of our eternality, because we're part and parcel of Krishna. So we are Sanatana. Therefore, we're coexistent with him as far as eternity is concerned. But we're not coexistent with him as far as Chit and Ananda is concerned, because his Chit, his knowledge, is always increasing. And there's this competition between increment and measurement. So we'll never be able to emulate Krishna's knowledge. We'll always be baffled by it because it's always increasing. And secondly, we will never be coexistent with Krishna as far as his Ananda goes, because his Ananda is always increasing. So it's impossible for us to completely understand Krishna. In fact, even Krishna himself, sometimes it says, doesn't understand his potencies as far as Chit and Ananda is concerned. Why? It's not that he doesn't understand, but in the moment that he understands it, it increases. So that's why it says even he doesn't understand, but it's not like us that get bewildered, because he can measure it. We can't measure it, right? Because it's increasing too fast and too greatly. Okay, so now we're going to hear the impossible goals that scientists will never achieve. And now these are the facts of the universe, and then we're going to go to the facts of the body. Both are inconceivable. So the following statistics of the universe are current and are validated by the references. So we're going to have Guru Puja a little bit late today. I should finish, I hope, in 20 minutes, and then we can have Guru Puja, and then if you have any questions after that, you can ask them. Facts of the universe. The following statistics of the universe are current and are validated by the references. So all the references to this, if you want to have this information, I can give it to you after the class. Only 5% of the universe that we're living in now is visible. The rest appears to be, this is what the scientists say. We know what the rest is, but this is what the scientists say. The rest appears to be a mysterious, invisible substance called dark matter, 25%, and a force that repels gravity known as dark energy, about 70%. Okay, so there's still the 5% is what's visible to us, right? It is claimed that it would take 270 quintillion miles to reach the end of the visible universe, the 5% of the universe. Okay, what is 270 quintillion miles? It's 270 with 27 zeros after it. That's how long, that's the distance between where we are now and the edge of the visible universe. That's not counting the other 70% that is not visible. What is that other 70%? It's explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The scientists say it's dark matter, about 25%, and then there's a force that repels gravity known as dark energy, about 70%. But actually it's 7 layers of earth, water, fire, air, ether, and mind that is covering the universe. So it's like an egg-shaped thing with all these coverings. And each covering is 10 times bigger than the previous one. So we can't even imagine the distance between the Earth and the edge of the visible universe, let alone another 70%. You know, it goes into astronomical numbers. That is, and who is going to live that long to go 270 quintillion miles to reach the end of the visible universe? Try to imagine how vast is the remaining 95%. 95% of the universe. These massive distances will never be traversed by any type of spaceship known to mankind. The speed of light is 186,282 miles per second in a vacuum. The edge of the observable universe is about 270 quintillion miles away. It would take around 47 billion years for light from anywhere to reach the edge of the visible universe, which is only 5% of the universe. If we ask how long it would take to reach the end of the whole universe, another 95%, which is still expanding, the answer is we may never know. And this is what the scientists are saying. This is not what's being said in the Bhagavatam. This is what the scientists are saying, right? Is it possible to travel to the edge of the universe? Unfortunately, since the universe is technically expanding faster than the speed of light due to the expansion of space between matter, it is theoretically impossible to ever reach the edge of the universe, since it will always be moving away faster than we could ever move towards it. This is reference Exploring the Most Unknown Universe by Professor Elizabeth Barberio, University of Melbourne. Okay. So we see that there are incredible distances in this universe. And even if you go at the speed of light, which is 186,000 miles per second, right? You would have to go, 47 billion years. 47 billion years. Who's going to live for? You can't even live 1 billion years. You're going to go 47 billion. And this is what the scientists are saying. It's not in the Bhagavatam. This is what the mundane guys are saying, right? Now, there are now we're going to talk about the body. Right? Now we ran into incredible numbers here when we're talking about the universe. Now we're going to talk about the body, and you're going to be shocked. Right? There are about 100 trillion cells in the human body. 100 trillion. In one day, about 330 billion cells are replaced. Means they die and they're replaced in one day. After 80 to 100 days, approximately 30 trillion cells are replaced. The body makes 3.8 million cells every second. Did you know that? Probably, are you aware of that? Most of them are blood cells. Reference, our bodies replace billions of cells every day. Blood and the gut dominate cell turnover, by Mark Fischetti and Jen Christiansen on April 1st, 2021. Okay, now we're going to go more deeply into what these cells are and the numbers, because there's more than just cells in the body. There's a lot more things, and the numbers are astronomical, like the space numbers. This was a homework done by Shrestha Mataji, and this is one of our homeworks that we have in our classes for kids every Saturday and Sunday. Don't send your kid if you want them to learn this, because they might become a pure devotee by learning this stuff. If you want your kid to be socialized by going to the demon schools, meaning socialized meaning becoming a karmi, then don't send them to the class every Saturday and Sunday, because it might influence them to become pure devotees, right? Assignment: find out all the different chemicals the body produces and the quantities and list of all the numbers of DNA, RNA, etc. in a human body. And this is from nzscience.com, so you can verify all these statistics. Enzymes are protein chemicals which carry a vital energy factor needed for every chemical action and reaction that occurs in our body. There are approximately 1,300 different enzymes found in the human cell, one cell. You know how big a cell is? Really small, right? These are the figures given by scientists using microscopic, not telescopes, but microscopes, right? These are things that you can see. You can't see the atom. No one's ever seen an atom. And you can't see the soul, which is smaller than the atom. And you cannot see Paramatma, which is smaller than the soul. Right? So there are many things that they will never see. And never means never. Right? There are approximately 1,300 different enzymes found in the human cell. These enzymes can combine with coenzymes to form nearly 100,000 various chemicals that enable us to see, hear, feel, move, digest food, and think. Every organ, every tissue, and all the 100 trillion cells in our body depend upon the reactions of metabolic enzymes and their energy factor. Nutrition cannot be explained without describing the part that the enzymes play. Okay, next, bodily fluids and their daily production. Every day, up to 1 liter or more of mucus is made by the body. Every day, 1/2 to 1.5 liters of saliva is made by the body. Every day, stomach acids or gastric juices, 3 to 4 liters per day are made by the body. Every day, red blood cells, approximately 173 to 259 billion cells are made per day. White blood cells, approximately 100 billion cells per day are made by your body. Right? Skin cells, 30 to 40,000 per minute are made by the body. Sweat, up to 10 liters a day, is made by the body. Number of cells in the body is approximately 100 trillion. 100 trillion, yes. The number of base pairs in one strand of DNA, now we're getting into DNA, which is not a cell. It is a molecule. It's not living, but it's necessary to form the body. All the information of how to make the body is in the DNA. Right? The number of base pairs in one strand of DNA is 3.2 billion. Now, how many strands of DNA and DMA, which is called dimethylamine, are there? So the number of genes per strand of DNA is 20,000. The length of one strand of DNA is approximately 6 feet. The length of all the DNA in the body is 67 billion miles, or 150 times round trips to the moon. That's in your body right now. This is the figures given by the scientists. Right? And of course, we believe everything they say. Right? Now we're going to talk about the nervous system, the neurotransmitters. DNA is made of 2 linked strands that wind around each other to resemble a twisted ladder, a shape known as a double helix. Each strand has a backbone made of alternating sugar called deoxyribose and phosphate groups. Attached to each sugar is one of 4 bases: adenine, A, cysteine, C, guanine, G, or thymine, T. These statistics were given on May 10th, 2022. Why does it talk about 4 bases? Because when a father's DNA meets the mother's DNA through the sperm and the ovum, they have to connect like this. It's just like, you send something to the space station, it's got to connect. It's very specific, right? So the DNA, half of the DNA is given by the father and half of the DNA is given by the mother. Therefore, when they connect and then the baby is born, you say, oh, he's got his father's eyes and his mother's nose. See? Well, how did that happen, the father's eyes and the mother's nose? It was by half of the DNA coming from the father and half the DNA coming from the mother connect. exactly correctly, right? This, of course, is happening all by accident. There's nobody controlling it, right? That's what the scientists say. But no, there's no way that it's happening by accident. It's too specific. Nothing like this could happen by accident, right? And it's happening all the time. And it's happening not in the human body. It's happening also in the monkey body, in the giraffe body, in the elephant body, in all these different bodies. There are 8,400,000 species. Just imagine, who did all this? Who did all this exact synthetic connections? Who did it? It happened by accident? That's crazy. Only an idiot would accept that it happened by accident. When you look at the complexity of it all, you say that's impossible. Nothing, and mathematically it's impossible that such specific things could happen by accident. And in such a volume, we're not just talking about the human body, we're talking about the 8 million different thousand species. And each one is different than the other, right? Okay, so then these neurotransmitters, there's a lot of them. There's 100 plus different types of neurotransmitters in the brain. Approximately 86 billion of neurons are in the brain, all right? So we're running into incredible volumes here just in the body, like we ran into incredible volumes in the universe. Now, the endocrine system, or hormones. Okay, there's a whole bunch of hormones, at least 50 plus different types of hormones. I'm not going to go through all of them, but it's a huge number. Then there's microbes. These are not, that are in the human body, right? There's, again, you're running into the billions in the human body of microbes. And then you have all these different hormones. You're running to hundreds and millions of hormones. And then, to finish with, no, we're going to skip that. I'm going to go directly to molecules. These are, again, not living cells. The composition of the human body is expressed in terms of chemicals. There's water, proteins, fats, hydroxyapatite in bones, carbohydrates such as glycogen and glucose, DNA, dissolved inorganic ions such as sodium, potassium, chloride, bicarbonate, phosphate, gases such as oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxide, hydrogen, carbon monoxide, acetaldehyde, formaldehyde, methane ethyl. These may be dissolved or present in the gases in the lungs or intestines. Ethane and pentane are produced by oxygen-free radicals. Many other small molecules, such as amino acids, fatty acids, nucleobases, nucleosides, nucleotides, vitamins, COF actors, free radicals such as superoxide and hydroxyl and hydroperoxyl. The composition of the human body can be viewed on an atomic and molecular scale as shown in this article. So I'm going to stop right there. We're running into hundreds and trillions of things that are either chemicals or living cells or neurons or this or that in the body. And therefore, your body, like the universe, has uncountable things. And all of them are organized, all of them are functioning in predictable ways, and it's beyond human comprehension. So that scientists will never understand all these things. They can quantify the things they see, but they cannot quantify the things they can't see, which is even greater than the things they see. So therefore, we have to depend on Shastra to understand what is actually true and what is not true. And okay, so I'll stop right there. Are there any questions? Yes. Yes, you have to speak in a microphone. So therefore, now you have the proof that chemicals come from life. It's not that life comes from chemicals. Your body is producing all these things, and all these things are being produced in the body of the Virat Rupa.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the lecture. Maharaj, I have a basic question about soul. You said that matter grows when it gets in touch with the soul. So does each blade of grass has soul?
Yes.
And even there are multiple bacteria
Anything
inside the
that
body.
grows. Remember, that was in epistemology, which says when a material object displays development, that means growth and shrinking, just as the body of the child, it must be understood that there is a spirit soul within the manifestation. So there are some rocks that grow and diminish. There are clouds that grow and diminish. They're all jivas.
Even inside the human body, there are multiple bacteria.
Absolutely.
So
Every
within
cell
the soul,
in your
there
body,
are multiple souls.
every cell in your body is an individual soul. And you are the dominant soul in the body. Every one of your cells is an individual. So therefore, now we can understand cancer. When you start eating nonsense things, you eat food cooked in dalda and rotis made with maida, or you might eat meat and drink liquor, all these things. Some of those living entities in your body decide to revolt against you because they're disgusted with all the junk you're putting in the body. That's the cause of cancer. You're these cells that try and kill the other cells, right? Because you're not governing your body correctly.
So Maharaj, that gives me a very base question. For example, we initially said that we were against Krishna, and that's how we came to this
We initially were what?
We were not in sync with Krishna, or we did not consider Krishna as our master, and that is how we came to this planet Earth, and then we are serving, and then we need to go back to the Godhead and all that things. So many souls revolted, and they came here, and even the bacteria inside our body. So this is humongous amount, and so many souls.
It's not a humongous amount because you put all the universes. Now there are many other universes also. It's not just our universe. There are many, many other universes. You put them all together, it's not even 1/4 of the domain of Krishna. The 3/4 is in the spiritual world. So we're in a minority here. You understand? You have to read Bhagavatam. You have to come regularly to the classes, then you'll learn all these things. We're in a minority. The majority is spiritual. The majority of people never fell down. We're the dumbbells. Now, why did we fall down? Because it's a rare thing to fall down from the spiritual world. Because we went too close to the edge of the spiritual world. The edge where there's a demarcation line between the material world and the spiritual world. If you go too close to that edge and you start looking at what's on the other side, you can become attracted to something, and that causes fall down. It's not that we hate Krishna. We become attracted by Maya, and because of that, we lose our attraction to Krishna, and we begin to desire to associate with Maya. At that point, we fall down.
Hare Krishna.
So this happens all the time. Like, look at the history of Ajamil. How did Ajamil was born in a devotee family. He was trained to be a pujari. By the time he was 16, he was doing pujari work, right? But one day he was walking through the forest, and he saw two very low-class people, a man and a woman, engaging in sense gratification and laughing. They were both drunk, and they were laughing, and they're engaging in illicit activity. And And he looked at it, and he became confused by it, and he gave up his devotional activity. And the rest of his life, he became like he became a sense gratifier. And he married a very low-class woman. They had 10 kids. And one of his kids, the last kid, he called him, he named him Narayana, because he remembered from his earlier life. And then the moment he died, he said Narayana. But he didn't mean Narayana, he meant his son. He was with his son. And then the Yamadutas came to take him to hell because he was very sinful. But the Vishnudutas came and stopped him and said, this man is our guy. They said, what? Your guy? Look at his rap sheet. And they said, it's like this. Look at all the sins he committed. They said, no, he's purified. They said, what? And they said, we don't believe this. He said, okay, then go ask your guru, Yamaraj. So they go to Yamaraj and they say, look, this thing happened. Is this true? We never heard of such a thing. He said, yeah. He said, but he didn't mean Narayana. He meant his son. He said, it doesn't matter. The name of Narayana is absolute. So you see, simply by one time seeing something, he fell down. Now imagine today, you give your kid a cell phone or a computer that's not limited. And they lock the door of their room, and then they go into that computer, and they can see all kinds of things that Ajamil just saw one time. They can see every night, watching movies and seeing all, these things. And what happened? You fall down. How long can you last? Especially if you're a kid, because you don't have experience in life yet. So they get educated with the internet, not by you, not by the temple. They're getting educated by the internet, and they're seeing things, and those images go right into their brain. And how to get that out? It's like drinking poison. How do you get it out of the body before it kills you? It's like slow poison. Their brain gets poisoned by all these things that they're seeing on the internet and hearing and reading. So it's very dangerous. The Hasidic Jews, before they let another Hasidic Jew's kids into their school, they have to go to the home, and if they see one cell phone or one computer, they won't let that kid come to their school. And they're right. They're absolutely right. Because they know that one kid will spoil all the other kids in that school. They don't want their kids being spoiled by the internet or by cell phones or any of these multimedia objects. Vyasadeva, he didn't have a computer. He doesn't have a computer. He's still there. He's writing Vedas. He doesn't even have paper. He's writing it on types of leaves, right? And he's a brilliant person, right? And he doesn't live in a house made out of modern materials. He lives in a hut that's made out of gobar. And he doesn't have hot and cold running water, right? But yet, he's the most brilliant person in the world, right? So you see, all these modern amenities are actually not good. They're actually not good. Now, you might be able to use, like we use a microphone. Prabhupada talks about a microphone. He says, yeah, we're using a microphone. But we can do without this microphone. We don't actually need it. We can also preach without the microphone. So you see, we have to be very careful what we choose to associate with. Like, for example, let's say some dirty guy comes to your house and knocks on the door. Let me in. Would you let that guy into your house? No. But as soon as you open the television or the cell phone, the dirtiest people in the whole world come into your house. The dirtiest people. People you would never even let into your house if they knocked on the door. You better think about these things very carefully, because it's serious. Any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
So, Maharaj, I had one question. I heard somewhere that in one of the lectures that when the living entity falls from the spiritual world, the first birth
It's
they
Brahma.
get Brahma. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So Brahma is a titular position. It's like President of the United States, you know. So you have various idiots that become President of the United States. They're not, it's not always the same guy, right? So the same with Brahma, the position of Brahma. It's different people can, well, the most advanced person in the universe becomes Brahma. So, you know, if you just fell down from Vaikuntha, you're still advanced, much more advanced than everybody else. So you get the position of Brahma. But if you misbehave, then you start going down. You take the elevator down. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Gopal Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is, what does Veda mean?
Veda means knowledge. Okay.
Which kind of knowledge?
Spiritual knowledge. Not man dog. Dog man. I'm sorry, I got it backwards. You see how I made a mistake. Not man dog. Or not dog man. Yeah, not dog man. You ever see the book Dog Man? You will when you go to school. One of the recommended readings in school. It's Vedic knowledge. It's Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. That's knowledge. Any other questions? Yes. Give her the microphone. You see, this is discrimination against women. We need a second microphone on that side.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
Maharaj, you mentioned there is 400,000 different kinds of human species.
Yes.
And
In the universe.
In the universe, and the most elevated is a civilized human being.
Yeah.
How would we define a civilized human
They're
being?
regulated for spiritual life. They regulate their eating, sleeping, mating, and defending based on spiritual principles. Those people are regulated. They follow the Varnashram system, strictly. Someone who's not regulated is not considered. You know, they eat at any time. They watch television when they're eating or something like that. You know? They don't bathe regularly. They don't chant at all. They sleep at any time, wake up at any time. Those are all unregulated people. They're not civilized. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
This is Madan Gopal.
Madan Gopal, Hare Krishna.
Prabhu. He's from
New Jersey.
Parsippany,
New Jersey.
Parsippany, New Jersey. He's building a 40,000-foot temple that'll be soon finished. And he's also a member of a senior member of the communication, ISKCON communication. And he's a good person and very involved in Prabhupada's movement.
Thank you, Maharaj. Just wanted to add a comment. You gave a very nice comparison of the cosmic scale of the universe and then the microscopic aspects of microcosmic, right, which is at a molecular level and the DNA level. And I was reflecting on how Krishna describes the same thing. And he says two verses right next to each other. He says, Kama Vashya cha bhutani dharayamaha mojasa pushnami cha oshadi sarvasoma. That I am the one who keeps these planets floating at the cosmic level, and then I've supplied the juice of life to the vegetables. And then the very next verse it says, Aham Vaishwanaro Bhutva Pranina. I then become the fire of digestion, which breaks down into the molecules, and I become the prana pana samayuktam pachamyannam chatur. Then I'm the ingoing, outgoing breath. So it's basically those two verses that are right next to each other that you kind of covered in this whole seminar. And it shows how Krishna is also kind of giving the same perspective, that he is so intricately involved in our existence from the cosmic level all the way down to the molecular level. And then for the purpose of saying that I also then cause them to remember and forget, which is the next verse, the 15:15. Sarvasya chaham hridis. I'm in the hearts. On top of doing all that and digesting your food, I'm also entering your heart and then make you remember and forget and so on. It's quite beautiful how he juxtaposes those three verses in the 15 chapters. I just want to kind of highlight that.
Thank you. Yeah. You'll be satisfied. I'm going to show you something that we're doing now. We're writing a curriculum for kids where we teach them vidya and avidya at the same time. So we juxtapose the two. They don't just learn avidya like in school. They learn both. and how everything is coming originally from Krishna. The first thing they do in school is to teach you that there's no God. If you believe in God, that you can if you want to, but that's not, God is not scientifically validated, so we don't accept the existence of God or the existence of the spiritual world. They teach that very emphatically when the kids get at least into middle school, so that they understand that belief in God is not significant like science, material science. So that's why it's important that if we're going to educate our kids, they should learn vidya and avidya at the same time. They should learn how everything is coming originally from Krishna. So I'll show you, we have some examples of this now that we're going to develop into a whole curriculum.
I believe Isha Upanishad says that you have to do both.
Vidyam cha yash yastad vedo bayam saha. Vidyaya mritam tirtpa vidyayam mritamastate. Yes, that's the way to learn. Vidya and avidya at the same time. That's what Prabhupada teaches us. If you carefully read his books, you'll see. He explains what the Mayavadis are and he explains what pure devotees are. Right? Any other questions? Yes. This is Shrestha.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So earlier you mentioned that there are the 400,000 human species. So unlike the other species of animals where they differ based on the body, the human species differ based on the consciousness. So it's possible to...
All species are based on consciousness, not just human beings. Yeah.
Mhm. But like as a human, we can like travel between those species in one lifetime based on our spiritual advancement, right?
Well, you start as a sperm, you mean, and then you keep evolving? Is that what you're talking about?
No, because Maharaj, you mentioned that like it's kind of like a spectrum, the 400,000 species, and the best of the human species are those who are regulated in spiritual life.
Yeah, if we're talking about consciousness, yeah. Like a kid, they're born, so they're on the level of Annamaya. And then they get a little bit older, they go to, they begin to see people. So they see more than just the mother, they see other people, right? And then they go on the mental level, right? And so there's Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manamaya, and then they go to more like the universe, and they begin to see the difference between the soul and the body, and then that's called Vijnanamaya, right? But then, if they experience transcendental ecstasy, then that is the fruit of all that consciousness, is to begin to feel ecstatic ecstasy in the association of devotees and Krishna. So, yeah, so those are different levels of consciousness of a human being that can go right up to the pinnacle, which is transcendental ecstasy all the time.
So then, Maharaj, based on a person's past karma, can they be born like with a greater inclination or a better discipline?
Absolutely,
to be
yes.
conscious?
Why? Because of second chapter, 40th verse, Nahabrikamanastasti pratijaya navidyate. Whatever you do in devotional service becomes a permanent asset that the next time you start in the human life, you start from the point you left off spiritually. So this is one of the advantages of Kali Yuga, that any devotional service you do is a permanent asset. You'll never be able to lose it. Right? And we've gone through a list of many of the positive things about Kali Yuga, but that's one of the main positive things. So, yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes, Prabhu.
So, today today we discussed about Vidya, Avidya,
Yes.
and also the minority and this one, right? So right now, I mean, I have a confusion. So, I mean, when I grew up, I have only one TV, like, which has like the TV, like, very few programs, hardly like 2 hours a week. Now the kids are living in a world where, right? So they are bombarded with a lot of media, and the spiritual education is so minority, right? Um, as a parent as well as kid, it's very hard, like, for them to make decision, right? Say no to million things. So when I grow up, I said no to maybe 10 things, right? The program that I watched was like a Chitralahari, or the weekend, like, Mahabharat, like 2 hours of TV. That was all I had. But now, like, with the iPhone and everything around, we are a minority, right? I mean, spiritual education is a minority because everything is, I mean, the grades and, rat race and whatnot, right? What is your advice? I mean, I mean, I have 2 kids, and I'm constantly, like, I'm very punctual to every class and everything, but I don't know, like, if they are getting, like, so am I able to successfully communicate what is important to them or not?
Well, look, I recommend you come with your kids to the classes. You both learn, and you have something to talk about all week long.
Yeah, I do that, like, I'm just being like last
No,
5
but you should be, your kids should be, you should be sitting with your children, listening to the class, because monkey see, monkey do.
Mm-hmm.
So if they see you sitting there next to them, listening to the same class, and helping them do the homework, and you doing the homework also that I give, then you both learn, and it's because a family that prays together stays together. So you come to the temple, you have to wake up early on the weekend, right? No sleeping in, and come to the class with your kid. Just like here's a little kid here, his father is bringing him to the class. He's asking questions, right? He's only a little kid, right? He's hardly even, 6 years old, 4 years, 6 years old, right? Anybody can learn this Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and the sooner they start, the better. But you have to be sitting with them. See, you send your kid to school to get educated. You have not analyzed the morality of the teachers. You don't know who they are. They could all be demons.
No, I mean, my personal experience also, I can, so we also went through, like, 15, 16 years, and some teachers were good. I mean, I'm influenced by 1 or 2 teachers in the whole the
No,
journey.
but how did they influence you? Did they influence you to become a devotee of Bhagavan Krishna, or they influenced you to become a scientist or a mechanical engineer?
No,
It depends what their interest is.
it's a debatable topic, but I definitely see, I mean, they cared about the student education. I mean, among 10 professors, like, this professor, I can clearly, had went a few steps ahead and, cared about the kid development.
No, but did they teach you? Did they inspire you to be a better technician? I mean, the idea is what you learn from them going to save you from birth, old age, and disease, and death in the next life?
Those two are different topics.
Okay, so therefore, they did not help you in the most significant way.
Agree.
So why not take education at the same time from people who can help you achieve the perfection of human life? That means to go back to Godhead. You should learn both things, not just one thing. You see my point?
Yeah, I do agree with that point. Yeah.
We're not saying don't learn anything.
Yeah.
No, but we're saying learn side by side from spiritual and material. So, because the kids today, they just grow up and they think there's only matter. There's no spirit. It's fantasy. This is real, but actually it's the opposite. This is not real because it's going to end. The spiritual part is what's real, and it's going to give you the greatest benefit. You know, in Vaikuntha, there are many couples there.
Mm.
They're eternally married, and they don't have to have kids because they're already eternal, right? And they're just having wonderful time all the time. Just like, let's say there's a Thanksgiving dinner or Diwali dinner at your home, and then your brother and your mother and your uncles and aunties come. You're all together, and you're all having a great time, right? And then the day comes when they have to go back. You know, one goes to Japan, the other one goes back to India, one goes to London, right? You might not see them again. And you feel a little bit of nostalgia. Think, well, it's such a wonderful time. I wish we could all be together all the time. But you see, that means you have an eternal soul. And you don't want it to end. You want it to increase, right? You can only have that in the spiritual world. You cannot have that here. That's why you feel morose sometimes when all the family members have to go back to wherever they live, knowing that that might be the last time you'll ever see them again. You see? So those type of feelings are important to understand that you have an eternal soul and you have internal yearnings, that this temporary world is not where you belong. Right? Now, how are you going to free yourself? You can only free yourself by understanding Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. You're not going to free yourself by being a mechanical engineer. You'll be able to make a living, an honest living. That's okay. But there's more to life than that. That's what we're trying to teach.
I agree.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Then we'll have Aarti. Guru Puja. Thanks, Srila Prabhupada. Who wants to sing? Anybody want to sing?
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Vandamui Savadhana Mate
Visadana Mate
Vandamuni Savadhana Mate Jahara prasade bhai e bhavatoriya jai
Prasade Bhai He Bhavatoriya Jai
Krishna prapti hoy jaha hoy te
Krishna Prapti Hoya
Krishna prapti hoy jaha hoy te
Krishna Prapti Hoya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya
होते अविद्या विनाश जाते प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते वेद गाय जहाँ रचरितो वेद गाय जहाँ रचरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आधम जनर बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आधम जनर बंधु लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवाना लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवाना हा प्रभु कोरो दया देह मोरे पादा छाया हा प्रभु कोरो दया देह मोरे पादा छाया हे जास्तु शुक्र भुवाना जय प्रभुपाद पतित पवाना जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशकारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvajagachasta Tarasatara Shri Madhis Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Pranasika Ho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasudi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samkund Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mayapura Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the Simple Devotee. All glories to the Simple Devotee. All glories to the Simple Devotee. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavana Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gurvani Chan. Yubhisesa Sunyavadi Paskat Yadasatari. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. There's one thing I want to add, very short thing. This is a brilliant point that Prabhupada makes. He says, actually, such scientists are rascals. They childishly say that life came from matter, although they are not at all able to prove it. Our Krishna consciousness movement should expose all these rascals. They are only bluffing. Why don't they create life immediately? In the past, they say, life arose from matter, and they say that this will happen again in the future. They even say this, that they will create life from matter. What kind of theory is this? They have already commented that life began from matter. This refers to the past, began. Then why do they now speak of the future? Is it not contradictory? They are expecting the past to occur in the future? This is childish nonsense. You see? So scientists are saying, well, in the past, matter gave birth to living things, right? Well, if it happened in the past, why don't you do it now? No, it'll happen in the future. This is complete nonsense. It's not science. Science is observation, experimentation, and then, what do you call it? Observation, experimentation, and then hypothesis, right? So they observe something, they experiment, and then they make a demonstration of it, right? And then they make their hypothesis or their theory. But what they're saying, well, it happened in the past, we can't do it now, but it'll happen in the future. This is nonsense. It's not science, right? They didn't say we did it in the past. They said it happened in the past, right? And it'll happen in the future. But we can't do it now. But that's not science. You see, only Prabhupada can point this out. There's so many smart people. Why don't they say something when the scientists say, well, we're going to do it in the future? It's crazy. It's not, there's no logic, there's no reason to it. It's just all bluffing. That's why he says they're rascals.